Yeah.
So you're going to do the first shot with this, and then...
Yeah, from across the... looking at you. I'm Rhino.
Okay.
Okay, standing by.
So should I go get in position so you can figure out where you want the camera? And then you know.
No. Okay, just give us one line now while we're standing here, just so we get a wild line, you know, so we can do... I'm a Rhino, I'm a South African Rhino farmer. Okay, go for it.
Now?
Yeah.
Looking at you or at the camera?
It doesn't matter, we're just going to use the audio.
Oh, okay. My name is Derek Leviton, and I am a South African rhino farmer.
One more.
My name is Derek Leviton, and I am a South African rhino farmer.
And the end.
The last one, the closing line.
Yeah.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer. And that means I farm an entire African ecosystem.
It's good, thanks. Yes, thank you, Carl. Yeah.
Do you know what format Apple saves its videos off your iPhone in?
Oh, with MOV.
And is it different if you use hyperlapse for like image stabilization?
I'm not actually sure. I've never stuff with that.
How's the view from up there?
What was that? Ah, there we go. Oh, it's beautiful. There you get your glory shot. Yeah, it's looking good, yeah? You don't see the glory because
My name is Derek Leviton, and I am a South African.
straight into camera, please.
Tell me when you're ready.
Yep, you go.
My name is Derek Leviton, and I am a South African rhino farmer.
End line.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer, and that means I farm an entire African ecosystem.
I'm going to just recompose. We'll do the first line.
My name is Derek Leviton, and I am a South African rhino farmer.
And the end.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer, and that means that I farm an entire African ecosystem.
Let's just try and get it a bit smoother now.
Okay.
Opening. Okay, let's go.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer.
Nice. Better. And the end. And go with the end.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer, and that means that I farm an entire African ecosystem.
Let's take one early morning atmosphere next to a dam. Second take, manual level, early morning atmosphere next to farm, Derek Leviton. Thank you. We're going.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer, and that means that I farm an entire African ecosystem.
That's the one. Thank you. Okay, go.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer.
Try a little bit smoother this time. Okay.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer.
End one, please, and go.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer, and that means that I farm an entire African ecosystem.
Okay.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer, and that means that I farm an entire African ecosystem.
End line.
My name is Derek Leviton. I am a South African rhino farmer, and that means that I farm an entire African ecosystem.
Good. You rolling?
Yes, yes. That works fine.
I want to undertake to do you just move the shade in a little bit closer. Another one? Yeah. More? Really? Straight towards you.
Okay.
Come to your left. Come to your left. More. More. Yep. You're rolling.
I think it's a common misperception that when we talk about rhino farming, we're keeping them in enclosed spaces, perhaps pens or feeding lots. But as you can see, the animals are free to roam. There are thousands upon thousands of acres here. The animals choose where they want to eat, who they want to hang out with, who they want to mate with. These are entirely free and wild animals. They don't know that they're on a private reserve. They don't know anything except that they're free to choose the lives they live. They're surrounded by native species to South Africa: zebra, wildebeest, giraffe, kudu, impala, waterbuck, warthog. This is an entirely wild environment. It's just simply a protected wild environment. So whereas they may be poached in a public reserve, we provide the security that they need. And in times of drought, we'll buy food and have it trucked in. We'll provide water through boreholes into dams. So in that way, we do manage the environment, because our goal is not to watch the animals die when there are difficult times here, but rather to ensure that the species survives. South Africa, in particular the Limpopo region where we are, has just seen the tail end of a 5-year drought of historic proportions. In fact, I think the worst drought in the last 70 years or more. And so it was very important for us to provide food and water during the drought years for the rhino. But as you can see now, we've been blessed by recent rains that have been quite nice, and we've got prodigious amounts of grass, and the rhino are once again simply eating what nature provides. So I think one of the most common misconceptions about farming rhino is that maybe we keep them in pens or small spaces or feeding lots. And what you see is actually we have thousands upon thousands of acres upon which the rhino roam completely freely. They choose their partners, they choose their companions, they choose where they wish to feed, they choose where they wish to drink their water, lie down at night. And I can promise you they're not habituated to my presence. If I move too close, they'll either teach me a lesson or move away themselves. So these are not tamed animals. In fact, as far as they know, this is a completely wild environment. They have no understanding of any distinction between this and Kruger Park. There's just simply food and water and space and security. So if they perceive any difference, perhaps it's that there's nothing attacking them because of the fact that we provide security and fences and armed guards. But their experience is as wild as any other animal's experience would be. In fact, this whole reserve is essentially wild. We have zebra and wildebeest and giraffe and kudu and hundreds of impala and waterbuck and bird life to explore for weeks at a time. So this is a wild reserve. It's simply maintained as a private wild reserve.
Get some shots of him while we're here.
Careful we don't pick a fight we can't win.
Action.
I think first we need to get some biological basic facts on the table. Rhino horn grows constantly, and this means that there is absolutely no reason for these animals to die to provide horn to the markets that consume it. If you dehorn a rhino today, in 4 or 5 years it's grown out so completely you can't even tell the animal has been dehorned. So when a poacher takes that animal, it kills it and it takes all of the horn off and we've lost the animal forever. When an animal is dehorned ethically under anesthetic, above the area where nerves exist, so there's no pain involved, there's no harm done, that horn grows back every 4 or 5 years. It's completely redone. So you can actually dehorn an animal every 1 or 2 years, probably every 2 years, and get a constant supply of horn that you can provide to the market and displace the poached product that is consumed today. So when we dehorn an animal, there's no pain experienced, there's no detriment to the animal, and it grows back. I don't love seeing a dehorned rhino, and you'll see on the reserve a lot of the rhinos have not been dehorned because we try not to unless we need to. But a rhino only uses its horn for 2 purposes in the wild. Either to protect its young against predation by lions or occasionally hyenas perhaps, or to fight with other rhino. And when it's on a private reserve where we protect it by not having lion and not having hyena, that first purpose is null and void. And we don't want rhino fighting for domination socially, so we dehorn them all, equal the playing field, and we sell that horn to supply, or we'd like to sell that horn to supply the markets that are now consuming the horn from dead animals and displace it with horn from healthy live animals. Pick up. Okay. The Chinese haven't told us that we can't take vitamins, even though the science is overwhelming that consumer, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, 1, 2. What did I start with there?
The Chinese haven't told us.
The Chinese haven't told us that we can't consume vitamins, even though the science on that is overwhelming. Study after study shows that the vitamins consumed by the general public are terrible for us. In fact, they halt those studies before they conclude them because you're not allowed to continue a study when you know there's detriment to the human beings involved. So we consume hundreds of billions of dollars a year worth of vitamins that science will tell us has no value. We use acupuncture, despite the fact that science will tell us it has no value. And in fact, we as a society demand that our medical aid, funded by a group, fuck it, man. Those who oppose the legal trade in horn often argue that increasing the supply of horn by providing farmed horn will create demand. More people in Asia will want to buy it because more horn is available. From an economist's perspective, this is of course ridiculous. Supply does not create demand. If supplying something created demand for it, then why are restaurant seats empty at any time of day? Why do hotels have empty beds? Why do airplanes fly with empty seats? Supply doesn't create demand. Supply meets demand at various points to create a price point for the market. So in the past, when 8,000 animals a year were poached, the price of horn in Asia was about $150 a kilogram. Now that only 1,000 animals a year are available to be poached because the populations in the wild are in such danger, the price of horn has gone up to about $20,000 to $30,000 per kilogram for raw horn. So supply doesn't create demand, supply intersects the demand curve and you get a price point. If we can provide more horn tomorrow from farmed, safe, protected animals than is currently available to the poachers via their nefarious methods, then we can bring the price that is paid for this horn down. We can do damage to the economics, to the business model that is driving poaching. So not only do we switch all of the revenue away from criminal poaching syndicates and into the hands of conservation organizations and the governments that support them, but we also ruin the economic model that drives poaching. Supply, again, does not create demand, it drives it to a lower price point. Let's talk about the ethics of dehorning a rhino. And there are two components to this. Both ethically, how could you scar an animal, this beautiful unicorn-like creature? And secondarily, how can you sell a product that may not have any medicinal value to people who believe it does? Let's tackle the first one first. A rhino doesn't use its horn for anything that is necessary on a reserve like this. A black rhino uses its horn occasionally to bring branches within reach so that it can browse. But a white rhino, like we keep here, it eats grass. It doesn't need the horn for that purpose. When there is no predation, because there are no lions present, a rhino has no natural enemies other than other rhino. And as conservationists, we don't want them harming other rhino, so we dehorn to level the playing field and to diminish the appetite of poachers out there. And this is not something unique to us. In fact, at this point, even Kruger is dehorning its rhino in an effort to protect them. So we dehorn them anyway. Then there's the question of whether we should be selling a product that may or may not have any medicinal value. And I think it's important to acknowledge the cultural arrogance of our position when we say we shouldn't be selling to the Chinese because we don't believe what they believe. So first of all, we have no idea if rhino horn has any medicinal value. I'm not going to pretend that I know that it does because I haven't done any of the scientific studies. There are some studies that have been done. They're inconclusive, or more to the point, they fall on different sides of the divide. There is no conclusive answer to whether it has medicinal value or not. But I'd like to...
Just that clip again. There is no conclusive evidence. Just let this...
Okay. There is no conclusive evidence one way or the other whether rhino horn has medicinal value. I've seen studies published that say it doesn't. I've seen studies published that say it does. I don't know the answer. But there are many things that we in Western culture embrace that are scientifically proven to be false, from the vitamin industry to acupuncture to a variety of other things, many of which have roots in Eastern culture that we embrace even though science has said there's no value to them. So who are we to arrogantly tell a culture that is 5,000 years old that we don't believe and therefore they can't believe either? Broke it. Point to the market for fake rhino horn products and say, look, the market is bigger than you anticipate or understand, and a legally provided quantum of horn cannot possibly satisfy that market. I would point out that there are people who want to buy the real thing and are willing to pay for it in any market, and people who just want everybody else to think they did, which is why you get stores that sell real Rolex, real Cartier, and people will pay the price points for that. And then you get people on the street who will sell fake Rolex, fake Cartier, and you get people who will pay the diminished price just so that other people will believe they were the kind of guys who bought a Rolex. That market is actually helping us destroy the economics behind poaching. Because if the fakes become so prevalent that nobody can tell what is real rhino horn and what is fake rhino horn, then the value socially of having a chunk of carved rhino horn on your tabletop is going to be severely diminished. And the price you can get for that carved ornament will be severely diminished. And again, if our role as conservationists is to destroy the economics behind poaching, then the guys who create fakes are doing us a favor.
Okay.
Let's think for a moment about how rhino farming, taking horns ethically from animals under sedation, horns that grow back, can displace the poached model and can do so without dehorning all animals, and can save animals in Java and Sumatra even while we're only dehorning in Africa. How is that possible? And the reason is simple. We have enough rhino alive today in private reserves and enough horn in private and public stockpiles to supply way more horn into the market than is currently being supplied by poaching. And when that happens, when we swamp the market with horn, we will bring down the price that is paid to poachers. Now, poaching only happens for two reasons. One, it's very lucrative, and two, it's not very risky. When they get caught, if they get caught, they get a slap on the hand legally, and then they're off on the streets again. We need to invert that balance. We need to swamp the market with legal horn so that the price comes down and it's no longer worth taking what we can enhance sense as a risk, because when the private reserves make money from selling horn, we can afford better security. We can put the radar systems around our perimeter, the thermal cameras around our perimeter, that allow us to seal that perimeter and protect the animals. So the risk of poaching gets to be very, very high, but also the benefit gets to be very, very low. And when we supply massive amounts of horn into the market, then it's not worth poaching here, and it's not worth poaching in Java, and it's not worth poaching in Sumatra, because a consumer who wants to get horn can get it for a fraction of the price that they're paying now. So why would you take the risk with your life and poach? You won't, of course. Let's talk about the numbers. There are 7,500 rhino in private hands today. On average, a rhino can produce about 1 kilogram of horn a year. A bull will produce more, a cow will produce slightly less than the bull, and a youngster will produce even less. So on average across a population, you can assume about 1 kilogram of horn grows out of the head each and every single year. So 7,500 animals in private hands means 7.5 tons of horn produced annually. On top of that, there's something like 30 tons in government hands and another 15 tons estimated to be in private hands in stockpiles that have accumulated over the years. We know that about 1,000 animals a year are being poached, and that means that about 5 tons of horn are finding their way into Asian markets today. And that's what's driving the price point that is leading to all of the poaching. If we can produce every single year 1.5 times that simply from the animals that are on private reserves, that's already going to do damage to the economic model behind poaching. If we on top of that throw that cached horn, that horn that's in stockpiles into the market, we can absolutely savage the economics behind poaching. And that means that whether we dehorn all of the animals around the world, or we simply go with the horn that's already been stockpiled and the horn that is produced every year on farms, we can destroy the poaching business model and therefore protect animals thousands of miles away as well. So for the last 40 years, we've been running 2 experiments side by side. We've asked ourselves, what happens if we keep rhino in protected public parks and we structure the legal regime to ban the trade in rhino horn? So it's all very protectionist. At the same time, we've been running very quietly another experiment. What happens when you save rhino by putting them on private reserves without the legal incentives, but just allowing private individuals to play their part in the conservation game? What we've seen is that the numbers of rhino in public parks has dropped so dramatically that we are facing extinction in the wild. And that's because that model doesn't work. It's failed completely. So we've gone from hundreds of thousands of rhino in the wild in government care to literally a handful of thousands, a few thousand, under 5,000 black rhino, definitely under 10,000 white rhino left in the wild in the government model. At the same time, we've had this tremendous exponential success on the private side where a handful of rhino have been bred to the point where we now have 7,500 rhinos sitting on private reserves being protected by private individuals. We have one farm that has bred over 1,000 new baby rhino. On this farm alone, we'll breed almost more than 1/3 of the rhino that come out of Kruger. We'll breed that number here. So the private model has worked really well, and it's time for us to recognize that we need to throw our weight behind it. We need to encourage people, to incentivize them, to create some sort of opportunity for them to breed the rhino, but also pay their bills, because it's super expensive to keep rhino. This reserve is safe because we pay for a private security force. The rhino survived the drought because we pay for truckloads of grass to be delivered every single day to feed the animals. That model costs a lot of money. We don't get help from NGOs, and we don't ask for help from NGOs. We don't get help from government. All we ask is that we create the financial incentives to help people pay their bills and continue this good work. And that comes from selling the horn that is ethically, humanely removed from the animals under anesthetic without pain and that grows back constantly.
Good. Rolling.
We even demand that our medical aids pay for these things that have no scientifically valid purpose. Acupuncture is often funded by medical aids. That means my money, somebody else's money, all go towards the guy who thinks acupuncture works, despite the fact that science says it doesn't. So who are we to say we can choose these things that don't work and we insist that they be funded and available, but we don't allow the Chinese, who have a much older culture, to choose which ones of their beliefs they embrace? Now, if we had to lose rhino to provide rhino horn, there would be a very valid argument for please don't consume rhino horn. Let's really study it and figure out if it has any value medically. But since the rhino doesn't need to be harmed to provide the horn, this becomes a very culturally arrogant position. Let the Chinese decide what the Chinese want to believe. Let the Americans decide what the Americans want to believe. The English what the English believe. Let's stay out of each other's business so long as no harm is done.
Well, you know, the viewers' attention will go to there. Okay, and away we go.
My name is Derek Leviton, and I am a rhino farmer.
And cut, please. Thank you.
So as I talk, I walk.
Yeah, one step first, then you start talking straight. Right, let's go.
My name is Derek Leviton, and I am a rhino farmer.
Okay, another one, please do. Straight again. Okay.
There is absolutely no reason for us to be losing rhino. They are the easiest animals in the world to save. So long as you provide the right environment for them, they take care of themselves. We just need to put in place the right economic model to incent people to keep them on their land, to give people a reason to invest in protecting them, and to destroy the business of poaching.
Okay, we going?
One of the beautiful things about protecting rhino in a private reserve is all of the other species that benefit at the same time. This is a reserve dedicated to breeding and protecting rhino. But at the same time, because we are protecting the land with an armed force and fences and everything else, and poachers can't get in, there are other endangered species that benefit from that protection. We have, we believe, 8 leopards on this reserve. We have hundreds, if not thousands perhaps, of pangolin living on this reserve. We don't farm them, but they benefit from the protection that is afforded to the rhino. So nobody can get in and poach those leopards. Nobody can get in and poach those pangolin. So they get protected as an ancillary benefit to farming the rhino. We have pristine wildlife here. This is formerly cattle ground that 30 years ago was returned to the wild and that has now bushbuck, waterbuck, zebra, wildebeest, giraffe, buffalo, warthog, species after species. This is wild Africa, and that's the environment in which we farm rhino. They live wild, they live free. They choose where to bed down at night, they choose who to mate with, they choose who to hang out with, which grass to eat, which water hole to visit. So we have returned to nature this entire ecosystem that was formerly used to feed men. The last 50 years or so have felt like it's just bad news, bad news, bad news from an ecological and conservation perspective. And what the world doesn't know is that here in South Africa, there has been an ecological miracle, a tremendous success in bringing back species after species from the brink of extinction. Whether it be sable antelope or bontebuck, the list is long and proud of animals that South Africa has brought back to the point where we have better biodiversity today in South Africa than at any point in the last 50 years. By most estimates, the number of wild animals alive today on land like this in South Africa is 20 times greater now than it was 50 years ago. And this farm is a perfect example. This farm was wild at one point, and then it was a cattle farm for many, many years. And now it's been reclaimed as a natural, pristine environment. Why has that happened? How has South Africa succeeded in this? It's by creating a private game business model. So in 1993, South Africa passed laws that allowed private individuals to benefit commercially from the wild animals contained on their land. And what happened there is it created a game industry. So the end result is an animal like the sable antelope that is more endangered in the wild than a rhino. There are only 800 or so in Kruger, whereas there are a few thousand rhino in Kruger. There are more than 15,000 of the sable antelope in private reserves. Why? Because people made money breeding them, selling them for people to see or even to hunt. And as a result of that, more people wanted to breed them and protect them. So that now we have an entire industry that consists of creating wild land out of formerly cattle land and putting animals on it and breeding them and protecting them and bringing up the biodiversity. And this is a model that the world doesn't really fully understand, and it has turned the tides on an ecological disaster that was taking shape in South Africa. An ecological disaster we can see taking shape in many other African countries. If you look at Kenya, their numbers of wildlife have dropped by 85% in the last 25 years, whereas South Africa has multiplied its game by 20 times. Why? Simply because in South Africa, the government allows one to profit from being a conservationist, whereas in Kenya, there's no such model. We need to now leverage that for rhino. We've seen what happens when people just want to protect rhino. We've bred numbers from a few hundred on private reserves to almost 8,000 animals. Let's unleash the power of that model by incentivizing people, by letting them make money, selling ethically removed horns that grow back constantly until we swamp the poaching business model. If we can provide enough horn into the market to displace all the horn that is taken from poached animals, and we can, then we can destroy the economics of poaching. We can make sure that the only people who make money in this are conservationists, not criminal syndicates. Because let's not kid ourselves. There is money being made today on rhino horn, billions of dollars worth of money being made on rhino horn. But it's all being made by criminal syndicates who kill the animals and sell the poached horn into the Asian markets. Wouldn't it be better for that money to be made by conservation operations that protect the animals, keep them alive? And that money, half of it goes to government in the form of taxes. It builds roads and hospitals and schools and electrifies rural areas. And the other half goes to conservation. And everything about that is better than the current system where the money is only made by the criminals.
One thing we haven't spoken. Stand by. You're coming straight to camera, hey?
Okay.
Okay, and action.
I think we need to talk about why it makes sense to breed and protect rhino on these kinds of private reserves.
Thank you. Nice. Stay where you are. Bring it down.
Yep. Do I cut?
Yes, bring it. Okay, let's go.
I think we need to talk about why it makes sense to keep rhino, breed them and protect them on wide open private reserves like this one.
Okay, one more just for me, please.
Okay.
And go.
I think we need to talk about why it makes sense to breed and protect rhino on wide open private reserves like this one.
Jumping, but it's not an issue.
Okay, I just wanted to